Welcome back, game developers. Today I'm going to show you how to add dialogue to your game. Let's get started. Let's go ahead and navigate over to our object database, and we're going to make two objects. The first is going to be a 9 patch. This is going to be the background for your text. Go ahead and insert it. I'm going to use the square, and I'm going to choose two colors. I'm going to use blue and like a light blue. Looks good. I'm going to use the border with a thickness of about 5. Okay, if you hold shift while you create your square, it'll stay a perfect square. All right, now if you didn't do it perfectly, that's all right. Hold shift and create it, and then you can just hit the crop button here. Boom, you got a perfect square. All right, go ahead and hit X. And we're going to name this our text BG, our text background. And then go ahead and resize it to about the size you want it to be when it's displayed. So I'm going to have my text boxes be about that big. All right, next we are going to set its origin point to be the center. Go ahead and replace it. Now we're going to add our text object. This will actually display our text. Okay, and go ahead and set it inside of your text box and resize it. If you hold Control and scroll your mouse wheel, you can zoom in. Okay, and then go ahead and set its origin point to the center. And this will just make placing it easier later. All right, now if you want to change the font, you can. And if you want to change the size and color, those options are down here in the properties. I'm going to keep mine black. Finally, if you don't have keyboard in your project, go ahead and add it in. I've already added it to mine, so it's no longer an option here. Okay, let's make an event sheet. Call this dialogue. And first we're going to create a function. So go ahead and right click, add function, and let's call this dialogue. And right click your function and add a parameter. And we will call this T for text, and the type will be a string. Okay, now let's go ahead and add some actions. The first one will be to destroy your text and destroy your text background. That way, if text already exists, you're not going to make duplicates of it. Now we're going to create your text and create your background. Now we want this to be created on our HUD layer. So if you don't have a HUD layer yet, you need to make one. I'm going to right click, do add layer at top, and I'm going to call it HUD, H-U-D. That stands for heads up display. Now in the HUD layers property, I'm going to change its parallax to 0x0, and that will freeze everything in place. So anything placed on this layer will stay where it is and it won't move when the rest of the level scrolls around. All right, so now that you've created your HUD layer, let's go to the object database and click on your text object or your text background, either one of them, and look at its position. Now my position is at 212, 215. Yours might be at a different location, but go ahead and grab that number, write it down or copy it. Let's go back to our event sheet, and that's the location that we want to create our objects at. So add action, system, create object. We're going to create our text background first on layer quote HUD. You can see it auto completes for us. Okay, and then our location was 212, at least mine was, and my Y coordinate was 215. Add action, system, create object. We'll create our text, and it will be at the same location. So this will be on the HUD layer at 212 and 215. Again, your coordinates might be different. All right, so we've cleared any dialog objects. Then we create some new ones. And now we're going to set our text. So add action, text, and we're going to come down to typewriter text. Hit next. Okay, and now the text that is going to be displayed, we're just going to write the letter T. Okay, that's the name of the parameter that we made for our function. This is going to make sense in a minute, but basically whatever we ask it to, it's going to display that text. Now duration is how long it takes for the text to write itself out. So I'm going to do 2 seconds. All right, so our first function is done. Now we're going to make a second function. So right click, add function. We're going to call this destroy dialog. And this will go at the end of any section where you have dialogue, where you're finished and there won't be any more. So we'll hit OK. And we're just going to copy these 2 lines of code. So I'm going to hold Control and click both of them. And now Control C. I'm going to click my bottom function here and Control V to paste it. Excellent. Okay, so now we need some code that's going to control the flow of the dialogue, right? We display some, we wait for the user to press a key, and then we display some more dialogue, right? And just kind of keeps going like that until you run out of stuff and you call the destroy dialog function. So an event, it's going to be keyboard on key pressed, and I'm going to use the space key, but you might have a different key in mind. And then I'm going to right click that event and add another condition and do text and is running typewriter text. If so, add action, text, then we want to finish the typewriter. So when you display some dialogue, if it's still typing out and you hit space, it's going to go ahead and just complete it so you can see the whole sentence or whatever you have written there. Go ahead and select the whole event here and copy it, Control C, paste it, Control V. And now we're going to right click this bottom condition, is running, and we're going to invert it. Okay, so now if you press the space key and the text is finished already, we want it to then display the next set of text. We'll go ahead and delete this action and we'll add a new action. And this one will be system signal. And we are going to send the signal next. Now move line 4 above line 3. Okay, this is all the code we need to run the dialogue, but now we need to script it out so we could actually say something. So I have my level here, and I want my character to walk up, and if they press space on this door, it's going to say locked, right? So I need a way to trigger or call my dialogue. So on the layer with my player, I'm going to go ahead and add another object. It's going to be a sprite, and we'll give it a color, but this will be invisible in game, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, and I'm going to call this scene trigger, and I'm going to give it an instance variable, and that instance variable is going to be called ID. All right, I'm going to come down in its properties. I'm going to uncheck initially visible. That way when I play the game, you won't actually see that brown square. Okay, so now we need to call our dialogue. So this particular layout is using my event sheet P, but that's where all my player code is. So I don't want to get that all muckied up, right? So I'm going to make a new event sheet. I'm going to call this level 1. And on level 1, I'm going to include my player code, and I'm going to include my dialogue code. Back on my platform layout, I'm going to change the event sheet to level 1. There we go. All right, so now I have my dialogue code set up, so now let's actually trigger it. So to do that, we're going to assume that the player is overlapping our scene trigger and they're pressing a key. And this scene trigger is going to have the ID of 1. Okay, let's go to our level 1 event sheet and let's add some code. So add an event. Player is overlapping another object, your scene trigger. Right click, add another condition. Keyboard, on key pressed. I'm going to use the space key. And then if you have more than one scene trigger on the same layout, you need to be able to tell them apart. So I'm going to add one more condition, and it's going to be scene trigger compare instance variable ID number equals 1, because that's the ID we set on our door. So this way I know that I am overlapping this specific scene trigger, right? The one that's over the door. All right, so our first action is going to be scene trigger, set value. We're going to change its ID to -1. That way you can't call it a second and third time and just keep calling the dialogue over and over again. If you want to be able to do that, then just ignore this line of code. Just don't include it. All right, so add action, functions, dialogue, and I'm going to have it say locked. And then we're going to do system, wait for signal, and it's going to be the word next, right? Because that's what we coded in our dialogue event sheet. When you press space, when there's dialogue playing, it'll send the next signal. All right, and then afterwards, we're going to add action, and then we're just going to destroy our dialogue. Okay, let's give it a try. Okay, we can see it says locked, and then it goes away, and I can't trigger it again. Okay, we can make this dialogue scene play out even longer if we just copy these 2 lines of code and paste it a few times, and then come in and change what it says. We can make more complex scenes by just adding more dialogue and telling more story. Let's give it a try. All right, and you can see you can't trigger it again. All right, so in today's tutorial, I showed you how to make a system that allows you to create and destroy dialogue, as well as how to script out a short little dialogue scene.